Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Welcome to the bonus show. Quick follow-up here on China's burial ban. This is an email from Mike. He said, I thought of this today while listening to Tuesday's show. It's from the TV show 6 Feet Under. Funerals aren't for the dead, they're for the living. I choose to think of them this way, and I find it enlightening. I believe in God, but I don't believe that the way I'm buried affects my afterlife. In the past and in other religions, it did. The way I'm buried is simply for those who survive me. So when the government chooses to destroy 400,000 graves, it is entirely righteous for the people to crowd and anger over it because the graves are there for them, not for the dead. And of course, like you said, I guess in some cultures and some religions, it would be for both, at least in the eyes of the living, maybe not necessarily for what happens with the dead in the afterlife. But yeah, you're right. This is obviously, I agree with this. The people who are alive find some comfort in the fact that they have their dead buried. Yeah. And obviously it's very disturbing when the Chinese government poops all over that, which is what they do. Anything to add, David?
No, I think that's an interesting comment. And yeah, of course, when we think about the wishes of the dead, of course, the dead, I mean, depending on your belief system, but there's no reason to think the dead will ever really find out whether their wishes were honored or not. So in some sense, it is by definition for those who survive them. Right.
Real quick, let's talk about the fish deaths that are occurring. This is kind of like the bee situation, which recently was just linked to, guess what? Oh, a pesticide. Big surprise. Anyway, millions of fish are dying all over the planet, seemingly randomly. In April, 500,000 carp were found in a river in Kentucky. Thousands of fish off the southern coast of California. 35,000 in Minnesota. That was blamed on a, quote, lack of oxygen. New Jersey, other places in California, all over the world, it seems. And nobody really knows why, at least not yet. I mean, it seems pretty hard to link something that happens in Minnesota with something that happens off the southern coast of California and in New Jersey. How do you do that? I don't know. But anyway, that's what's happening. Any ideas, David?
No, well, I don't have any specific ideas, but we have the bee death problem. We have mysterious fish deaths. In the last few years, we have mysterious bird deaths where birds just fall to the ground. Again, we don't know for sure what's causing this, but it seems like it's worth finding out and being cautious and taking a kind of conciliatory approach to those that are investigating it, as opposed to an adversarial point of view where you think they're just kind of like pushing liberal ideology, like is happening with climate change in so many cases. Because I don't really care whether you're liberal or conservative. Right now, this is the planet. And if it gets ruined, it gets ruined for everybody. And it doesn't really matter whether you believed what the Heartland Institute said or what the NRDC said, right? And the instant adversarial nature when anyone says, whoa, we should really look at what we're doing that might cause this stuff, makes no sense.
Right. And it's there's the pig thing too. Of course, that was a specific disease or virus. But anyway, something to keep our eyes on. I don't know, kind of makes me worry about eating fish, but I'll try not to think about it. And by the way, that story was from Dan. Here's a story from Ryan about Amazon patenting an incredibly common and popular photography setup. Essentially, this is the setup where you photograph something with a white backdrop using a few lights. Okay, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office awarded Amazon with U.S. $8,676,045. That's the patent number on March 18th. The patent is simply titled Studio Arrangement. Okay? and it details the rudimentary and standard photo practice of shooting objects in front of a clean white backdrop using a controlled lighting setup. So what does this mean? In theory, this means that if other businesses or companies use this setup, Amazon may be able to go after them legally, correct?
Yeah, presumably it could be violation of their patent. The thing is, depending on how the patent is filed, it doesn't necessarily mean that this is copywritten and others are prevented from use, right? Like you can hold the patent, but other people can still use the technique. I was reading quite a bit about the context of this in international or rather intellectual property law. It's not quite the drastically horrible situation that some are making it out to be, but this is just a white backdrop and lighting it in a certain way. Why is it that can be patented when it's a technique? Isn't it equivalent to, for example, when you run, balancing more on the balls of your feet than the heels, right? It's just something that people do. How is it that you can patent something like that? Maybe that's not exactly the best analogy to be made there. So I totally understand the concern, but I don't think that this means nobody can photograph products with a white background now unless they want to pay Amazon some kind of royalty.
Yeah, some type of fee. It's ridiculous. Obviously, photographers all over the place are calling it absurd, and it's something that has been used for a long time before Amazon even existed. So, yeah, there it is. Stephen Colbert actually brought it up, and he, I guess, came up with he said, why not patent the idea of patenting ideas? It is that ridiculous. That's what we're dealing with here. We've talked about the patent system before. I think the patent system needs to go. I think it has its benefits, but I think I don't think there are enough of them. I think it just hinders progress, and honestly, it makes things cost way too much, simply. Anyway.
But Lewis, what about the return? In other words, the patent, in a way, can be seen as what makes the research and development investment worthwhile, right? The payoff is the patent. Aren't you saying you have to spend money on R&D, but you can't patent what you come up with?
Well, here's the thing. It seems like in the vast majority of cases where there's going to be a lot of research and development on a product, and it moves to the market, it gets produced, we already see that everyone just takes that, slightly modifies it, and puts it out. The patent isn't really doing anything. It's really doing nothing because we have the technology now to analyze it, to reproduce it, and the system allows for slightly modified things to still work and to not,
not violate the patent or copyright.
Right. So what the fuck is the point? It makes absolutely no sense. It's stupid. Let's get rid of it. And you know what? That research and development is still going to happen. The things we need are still going to be produced. You just need smart people with, I don't know, good marketing skills, or I don't know. I can think of any number of ways that this product, the original product, could still be successful. Anyway, let's talk about Austin, or perhaps you would like to talk about Austin.
Right. I went to Austin. We had a little bit of like a high school reunion, a couple different friends, another one who lives in Austin, and then another one who lives in Arizona. We all met up in Austin, and it was a magical weekend, Lewis, we must say. I found Austin to be really, really cool. The things I liked about it were, certainly it's way more affordable than New York City. It's physically smaller than New York City, so it's much easier to get around. The public transit system is a disaster. It's all blown up. I mean, it's just, there's these buses that, for example, the hotel I stayed at to like the center point of downtown was about a 12 to 14 minute drive. And it would have been more than an hour on the public transit, combining multiple different buses and like standing outside in the insane 95-degree humidity waiting for the buses. So the public transit leaves a little bit to be desired. Yeah, I liked a lot of things about it. We went to some great restaurants. I mean, certainly it seems like a very livable city, but if you don't like driving and or don't want to have a commute that may be, if not a long time, a longer distance, it may not be the right city for you.
Right. So yeah, like David said, overall, we had a pretty good time, and there's not really a lot to do if you don't want to try lots of different restaurants and check out stores and things like that.
Well, there's a lot of outdoor stuff that there is to do, right? And the weather's good for much of the year, so you can have like a very active lifestyle in general.
Right. You're not going to go tour ancient ruins, though, or anything like that. But yeah. So, and David also got to see the infamous 6th Street.
Right, where Lewis works. And in fact, we were literally just walking to check out the bar where Lewis works. And directly in front of us, there's about a 45, 50-year-old guy. And in front of that guy, there are 2 women with a couple of other men who are in their mid-20s. Somehow, as we're walking, and we're very close to this group of people, as we approach the bar where Lewis works, there's some kind of a scuffle, a verbal scuffle. And all of a sudden, the young guys that are with the woman, the 25-year-old woman, are punching and shoving this 45-year-old guy who presumably had either touched or said something, I guess, aggressive to the young woman. Is that kind of how the scuffle started? First,
I think he grabbed her butt. And then when she yelled at him, he shoved her.
Oh, okay.
And that's when, the punches were thrown.
So this guy's drunk, and he gets punched, he gets shoved, and he actually flies down towards the ground and trips 2 other people and slams into a bike rack, okay? The 2 other people that he tripped actually fell onto me. They fell onto my girlfriend. My girlfriend was kicked by this entire scuffle. So we stand up, and then it seems like things are kind of dying down at that point. There's a very brief respite. And then all of a sudden, all I see is the 45-year-old guy who presumably had touched this woman up against a wall trying to defend himself. And 2 guys are just like furiously punching this guy. Okay. That gets broken up. And then things seem to be separating. Then, and we're standing right there, the guy, this 45-year-old guy who was just absolutely drunk, reapproaches the 25-year-old girl. I don't know exactly what words are exchanged. And the girl yells, "Well, then why don't you hit me?" And this 45-year-old drunk, large guy punches this girl right in the mouth. I mean, a sucker punch, Lewis, right in the mouth where you hear a noise. Her mouth starts bleeding, and then the melee is on. And at this point, I almost got sucked into it because everybody had fury in their eyes. And I was just close enough. We were all trying to kind of get away and navigate the situation. I was just close enough that everybody all of a sudden looks at me, and it's not clear whether I'm part of this fight or not. And I almost got pulled into it. I ended up just walking backwards and just getting out of it, and ultimately police showed up. But it was just insane. I don't think I've ever witnessed an actual melee like that in person.
Right, and it's funny that it happened like the second we walk onto this street, right in front of the bar I work at, and I'm like, that's actually pretty rare. I think I can count on my fingers the number of fights I've seen, like that on the street. So, and this is a very, very busy street.
Right,
when it's they close it down, people are walking in the street, just packed. So, anyway.
The other thing, there was another thing that happened on that same street, which was later on in the trip, we were at a restaurant just sitting inside. It was kind of like a quick, it was a ramen place actually. So you don't expect to be in there too long. And a friend of ours who has a dog left his dog tied up outside on the street. Not really a big deal, no sweat. And we're in there, we're having our meal. And towards the end of the meal, this young woman walks in. And she asks if the dog belongs to anyone who is in the restaurant. So our friend says, yeah, that it belongs to him. And she says, in what I admit every one of us found to be a really annoying tone, you really shouldn't leave the dog out there. It's really bad for the dog and it's not good. And the dog could get stolen and he might be abandoned and he's just there all by himself. And all of our reactions, Lewis, correct me if I'm wrong, were, wow, look at this, self-righteous girl who's just coming in here to scold people because of doing something she doesn't agree with, right?
Yep, I agree. We all had the same look on our faces. We all had the exact same reaction. I think there was like 6 of us there.
So, okay, that's fine. That happens. And our friend kind of saying, well, the dog owner saying, since she did that, who knows who's out there now? I'll just go out there now instead of in 5 minutes when we're done paying and stand with the dog. We finish paying. We walk outside. He's standing there with his dog. And he explains that as he was walking outside, a vagrant with, kind of like a backpacker with a huge backpack, clearly carrying all of his stuff in his backpack, was in the process of stealing the dog, literally as he walked outside. Had that girl not walked in and said, you might want to go out there, he would have waited 5 more minutes and even 5 more seconds barely would have had his dog stolen. And he ended up calling the girl. The girl actually was trying to call him to figure out who the owner was. I guess his phone didn't ring when we were in the restaurant. And he called her and he said, you know what? You were completely right. I walked out early because of what you told me, and I caught someone stealing my dog.
Yeah, incredible. And and I guess when we were walking down the street, he saw the guy again, and then we saw a guy the 3rd time, and he pointed him out to me. And I called the guy. It was this young, homeless kid. I called him over, and I was like, "Were you trying to steal this guy's dog?" And he just started.
He denied it, right? He said, no, I was just trying to see who the dog belonged to by looking at the collar. But it's like, well, you were kind of unhooking the leash. You weren't just looking at the tag.
Right.
Incredible.
And, I didn't even hear him finish talking because someone started talking to me. But anyway.
And then the last thing I want to talk about, Lewis, is this. Having grown up in New England for a really long time, I'm used to the people in New England who are fake nice. And what I mean by that is they act very polite, but you can tell that their niceness is not genuine at all. Like it's just not genuine in any way. It's this kind of politically correct politeness. I grew up never liking it. The one thing I can say that was very evident in Austin, and I don't know if this is the same in all of Texas, but Austin, more progressive, etc. The culture was such that people were genuinely nice. In other words, I didn't get that feeling that people were doing the New England politically correct nice because they're getting their nice statements on the record and being polite. If you were to see a transcript of the conversation, people really seem genuinely nice there.
Yeah, there is something to be said about Southern hospitality. I find that to be generally true, except for Florida. And as backwards as many places in the South are, I do find that that people are generally nicer in the South for some reason. And in many ways, it is the opposite of New England and New York. But anyway, yeah, it was a good time was had by all, and luckily nobody got punched in the face and nobody's dog was stolen. And that's the bonus show for today.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.